Hello, everyone. My name is Jen, and welcome to the Book Refuge. All right, everybody. Welcome to week 45 of 2023. Oh my gosh. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to the end. Oh, that's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. This week was a big week, guys. It was a big week. We had the release of Iron Flame. I binged an entire monster romance series. I read over 5,000 pages in just this week alone. Yeah, I think that's what I added up. It was crazy. It was a crazy week. But before we get into my review of all the books I read, we do have two new patrons to welcome to supporting the channel. There is Jess D and Peter P, which that's an alliteration for you. But thank you both so much for supporting me on Patreon. I know that it's a tough time for everybody all over the world, so the fact that you would put a little of your hard-earned money towards me means so much. If you're interested in supporting via Patreon, there are links down below. There are also channel memberships, which gets you early access to videos and help you get to vote on videos that I make as well. But otherwise, you can help out my channel just by liking this video, sticking around as long as you can, and leaving a comment. All of those things help out my videos without you having to spend anything but time. So I appreciate it. So let us get in, because I know that I will have so much to say about all of these. I, of course, have my notes right here. I got through 8 books, but like I said, there was so many pages because I read some big-ass books. So let us get started with these. Hold on one second. There we go. Sorry, I didn't have it set up the way I normally like it. Also, I have myself a peppermint mocha that I made me, because it's that time. I'm not big on the pumpkin, but I am big on mint and chocolate mint things. So this makes me very happy. So I made myself a cup that I will be imbibing a little bit as we go. So the first book that I read was one I have had on multiple TBRs through the year. I think I might have even had one on like last year, because I think this book was out last year. I don't know. But it was time to read this book. So it was A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain. Oh, this book was just as good as everybody has told me it was. I've had multiple friends tell me how much they liked it. It's why when this one showed up in my Barnes & Noble, I bought a copy, and it has just sat on my shelf. And like I said, I've put it on TBRs over and over again. And this was the time, okay? So I cracked the spine on this one. I actually did end up downloading the ebook for it so that I could read it in bed with the lights off, because that's how I read at night. But this book is like a monster fantasy romance, as you can tell by the cover here. This is The Dustwalker Brides, okay? So this first book is about Orpheus, who is our Dustwalker right here. And every 10 years, he comes to this village and he takes a tribute. We don't quite know what he's taking, because the humans don't really wait for him to hear, but he will take a human. It honestly can be a woman or a man. It doesn't matter. And he will put a ward over this village to protect them from demons, because in this version of Earth, there are demons. There's a veil between like the demon world and the human world, and the demons will cross into the human world when they want to, when they're hungry, and they will eat people. And they will eat each other too, but they'll eat people. And the Dustwalkers, they are their own type of thing. And of course, we'll find out more of them through the series. But what we know of Orpheus, like, we don't even know how many of them that there are at that point. We just know that there's Orpheus. And our heroine, her name is Rhea, and she's been kind of an outsider, a pariah in her village for years now. Basically since her parents and her siblings all like died. The house was attacked by demons and all of them were killed except for her. She survived somehow. And they see it as like she's the bad omen who brought that on her family. And so they've kept her on the edge of town. They kept her in a little cabin by herself. They don't want anything to do with her because she's bad luck, bad omen. So now that she's like gonna be of age, like this time that he comes around, she's 26, but you know, it's been 10 years since he's been there. And they're going to force her to be the tribute. Now, the thing is, Orpheus has a rule that the person has to be willing. And he'll be able to tell if they're willing or not. So she's not exactly willing when we start this. But when he, you know, comes out and is going to be taking his tribute, she does agree to go. Because she's like, you know what? These people don't want me here anyway. Maybe it is better if I go with him. And then I'll find a way to escape him. But maybe it's better if it just gets me away from these people, right? So she agrees to go with him. And she, again, doesn't plan to stay. But he takes her to his home in the Vale, where he has built a home there. He has a garden there, which is very interesting because he doesn't need to eat vegetables or food, but it is for the humans that he does bring there so that they have food to eat. And we learn, like, I won't go through, obviously, every detail of this, but it is kind of interesting to set it up, particularly because Orpheus is different than all the other Dustwalkers. There aren't any other Dustwalkers that do it the way that he does. What Orpheus has been told is that if he can get a human to offer their soul to him, then he won't, then they won't ever die and he'll have a companion for life. And that is all that he wants. He wants a companion so much. And we learn about these Dustwalkers that when a Dustwalker is born, they are almost the same as like other demons. So they're mindless, they hunger, they eat either other demons or animals or people. And the reason why he has certain features that he does is that the like animals that you eat is kind of what forms your body, right? So he has the ram horns and he has the skull that he has because those are the animals he's eaten. And also the Dustwalkers gain their smarts by eating people. Like they take in the intelligence basically of the people that they eat. So the more intelligent Dustwalker that we'll meet, it means the more humans that they have consumed. So it's a very interesting trade-off because the more humans they consume, the smarter that they get, but also the more humanity that they gain, and then they feel, you know, bad for doing that at a certain point. Now, there is some things about him that he still can't control. If they smell blood, he's going to want to eat the person. If they're too afraid, they're going to want to eat the person. Also, being afraid can draw other demons to you as well. So those are kind of the two dangers. Now, what gives Rhea kind of a leg up in this is she actually doesn't have a lot of like innate fear. So at first seeing him, she's a little bit afraid, but he can tell she's not as afraid as like the other offerings that are brought to him, because that's the thing too in the beginning is like she's the offering that they want to give, but they also have some backups in case she were to refuse, because you know they have to have a willing person to go. So anywho, lots to explain with this, but it's so fascinating. This book was great. So anyway, we learned that Orpheus has done this every 10 years she is the 19th woman, or I mean the 19th person, because again, there's been men sometimes too. She's the 19th person that he's brought there, and all the others have died. And, you know, through this book, we find out what's happened to some of them. We find out, you know, sometimes there was those that ended up being too afraid and he ended up eating them because he couldn't help it. There's some who tried to run from him and got killed by demons. Like he has, you know, sometimes he brings a companion there and they only last a couple days, and then there is a reason why he has to wait 10 years. I won't like spoil that, but then he has to wait the next 10 years until he can do it again. So anyway, this kind of becomes like a Beauty and the Beast tale is what this one is the most, you know. And Rhea, as she learns more about him, there are things to love about him, but it is also still a captive situation, because there's no way for her to get away from him that she won't be in danger. And we also get introduced to kind of our main villain of the series in this one, called the Demon King. Again, I won't spoil too much about him, but he wants to destroy all the Dustwalkers. He hates them, and when he finds out that Orpheus has a companion that is actually lasting, he gets a bit nasty about it, for sure. So anyway, I loved this one so much. I gave this 5 stars. This one was a 3 on the spice scale. You know, we do have Monster Dick. If you go to Opal Rain's Twitter, you can see some NSFW photos of the kind of dick that they have. The Dustwalkers can also do some magic, like they can heal humans. They are not easily killed. In fact, we will find out through this, there's only one way to kill a Dustwalker. Any other type of death, like even if you cut off their head, if you like dismember them, like they will come back within 24 hours, like they heal and regenerate. So there's only one way to kill them, which again, I'll save that for you to read to find out. And they can also do like small magics, right? Like he's able to do wards. He's able to do things to like protect this home that he's built. And there's also this one thing which I will share because it is something that each Dustwalker has to do, is the human women, their body is not made to take Dustwalker cock because it is literally huge and ginormous. And so there is this spell that each Dustwalker has to learn where they actually like change the insides of the humans so they can fit the Dustwalker dick. So that's very interesting whenever that happens, because it has to, in each book that happens. So yeah. Anyway, I gave this one 5 stars. I loved it. This was a slow burn. You know, Rhea does not trust him. There's times when she gets really frustrating because you're just like, woman, just trust him already. But it is understandable. Like, she's never trusted anyone because, you know, since her family died, no one has treated her well. And then there's this monster who took her from, you know, the life that she had and wants to make her his bride. And she just is like, I don't want any part of it. So it does take a long time for her to believe that she could love him or he could love her. And yeah. So anyway, I gave this one 5 stars. And it was a 3 on the spice scale. And I will eventually be talking about all 5 of these books because I did read all of them. So when I get to the end of that, I'll tell you which, like, my ranking of them when we get there, because I promised to do that. But this one was 5 stars. It was a 3 on the spice scale. Next, I did read A Soul to Heal, which was book 2. So with this one explaining a bit of it, it will kind of show you a bit more into some of the things unraveling because that's just how it goes. So I will say, like, if you want to read this series, I'm going to try not to do too many spoilers, but it does kind of give away certain things when I'm going to talk about each book. So know that. So with this one, we meet a mafia. That's another name for the Dustwalkers. And he actually starts out this book being called Nameless, because actually the Dustwalkers don't have like a name when it starts. So he's just like called Nameless in this. And he is a much less advanced mafia. So we're meeting one who's a lot more animalistic. He's actually seen Orpheus and Rhea and is like, I want a human. How do I get one? And he is like very interested in finding one. And Orpheus, he is like, well, you need to find one. This one's mine. You can't have her. So this is something that Nameless has been contemplating, and he's started to slowly kind of copy things that Orpheus has done, preparing himself for the day that he might get a chance at a bride. I want to warn us that I may have to fix that soon for the light, but also the sunshine just feels so good right now that I might just let it come over. We'll see. Anyway, sorry. That was a random break in this, But anyway, so then we have our heroine, Delora, who it starts, she's in the human realm, and she is on trial for murder. And she did do this murder. She murdered her husband and I think also his mistress. So she'd been married to this man for a while, and she is a plump and curvaceous woman. She's very much like mistreated for being fat. But again, she's the wife of, he's like a war general. He's much older than her, but she was basically kind of like the human villages had like traded like spouse, you know, like they traded people so you could get fresh blood into it or whatever. So it'd kind of been like an arranged like marriage of convenience with this guy, and she thought she'd been happy with him, but he'd been cheating on her pretty much the whole time. And finally she kind of snaps and she murders her husband and his mistress. And this kind of introduced us to something through this series, that if the humans aren't like our human, like if they aren't our people, we don't really care about them. Like they will get eaten or we will kill them and we don't really care about it. So that's something to be warned about. But again, we have our Mavka, and what happens to Delora is she's getting thrown into the veil. So she's getting literally like thrown into the veil to be fed to the demons, and that's how they're getting rid of her. And when she falls into the veil, she ends up falling on top of Nameless. He's just standing outside of his cave, and she falls on him. And her body is incredibly broken. She's almost dead. And he is like, oh my gosh, this is a human. This could be my chance. So he goes about healing her body, which is very painful for him. So the Mavka, they can heal, but they take on the wounds of who they hurt. So he's taking on her wounds, and they are awful. Like her spine is broken. She has broken ribs. She has broken leg, like all these things. So he can only take like a few of her wounds at a time before he has to wait till he heals again. So he brings her into his cave, and he's trying to heal her, and he knows that he like wants her to be his. And when Delora wakes up, she's number one, like, oh my god, I'm in the cave of this monster, I just want to die already. And she does. She is basically suicidal. She's like, my people didn't want me, they threw me away, I'm just gonna get eaten by these demons, so I don't know. So what Nameless offers is how we find, like, we already know this now from reading the first one, but the way that a Dustwalker gets their bride is the bride has to give her soul to the Dustwalker. And when she gives the soul to the Dustwalker, she becomes a phantom. She also cannot die now. And they can never spend more than 24 hours away from each other, or they will like appear at their Dustwalker's side. So there's a few other quirks that go with this, but Nameless asks her to give him her soul, and is like, if you don't want it, give it to me, because I want it and I'll take care of it. And so really this one is so like sad to start, because our heroine doesn't want to live, so she just agrees to give this monster, very like black and sick, like her soul is very like sick because she's so depressed, she like wants to die. And so he takes it, and she also then gives him a name. She calls him Magnar. So now Magnar is his name. And he goes about making a home for her. There's also a plus side, because once you have like given your soul over, the Dustwalker is no longer like hunger to eat you. So even if she was afraid, or even if she were to like have something happen to her, like he wouldn't be as tempted to eat her, because the Dustwalkers are like always tempted, they're always hungry, and once they have a bride, that like goes away. So he then goes about making a home for her, and yeah, so that's kind of what I want to say about them anyway. So she's now like given her soul, and she can't die. She doesn't fully understand what she's done by like giving her soul to this demon, but it ends up being like a good thing, because she just wanted to die. And Magnar is like, what a waste. Like, I don't want you to die. I want you. Like, I want to keep you. And so I just love that about it. And I really enjoyed this one as well. There's so much to come, but I can't talk full spoilers on all of these because we'll be here forever. We have so many books to talk about. But I gave this one a 4.5 star, and it is a 3 on the spice scale. This one does have some trigger warnings for a monster pregnancy and a very like violent birth that happens. So just want to put that out there. It definitely gave me a little bit of Renesmee vibes in certain aspects about this one, which is interesting. So, okay, next up, we had a reread. I reread Princess by Claire Kent. This book I annotated for a patron, so this one is book 2, technically, in the Kindle series. However, that works out. And yeah, so this one is in this book, we see kind of the start of the incident that happens in the Kindled series. This one's kind of a good one for knowing kind of the scientific side of it, because our heroine, her father is really wealthy, and they had heard about this meteor that was coming. So we know that it was a meteor that hit Earth, and it hit in Europe, but it, you know, it like ruined the whole world for what it did. And so our heroine, Olivia, is going to college. She's a swimmer, and yeah, she's going to school, and her father sends a man, his name is Grant, to pick her up. And her father is like, don't ask any questions. You're going to go with this man. I'll explain what's going on when you get here. So she's like, okay. So she is told to pack a few things and go with Grant. And when they arrive where they're going, it is a underground silo that her father has bought a room in, and they're going to lock it down to hopefully outlast this event. And it works. It does. So we wake up like 2 years later, or we stop at 2 years later, and now, you know, they've been living in this for that whole time. They've seen what's happened up above, that people haven't made it. Her father has died now. He like died in his sleep, so it's just her. And then we do like another time jump, and like Grant is teaching her some like fighting skills and like teaching her some things. And then they have this like one night together where she actually like loses her virginity to him, and they have this night. And then they're like, we can't do this again. I don't know why they decide they can't do it again, but and then we skip forward again, and we're now at the time where they're going to open the doors, because the people staying there are like, there's people able to live out there now. We want to get out of this silo. We've been in here for 4 or 5 years at this point, right? So they finally start opening it up. They're still like sleeping inside the silo, but people can go out during the day. They start building a garden out there. They start kind of adding to it. And now there's a chance to start doing some scouting and like figuring things out. So one day when Olivia ends up going with Grant on like a run. Like she's like, I want to get out there. She hasn't been anywhere else in 5 years. So she goes with him, and while they're gone, the place is attacked and is overrun by these wolf packs, which we've seen in other books in the series. And so their only chance is they go to Haven, New Haven, which is where a lot of our friends in the series are, and ask for help. So they're putting together a group that will hopefully try to take back their home. And we see a bunch of the characters that we've seen before, as well as characters we'll see later. So that's kind of the cool thing in this one, is that we see Cal and Rachel, which they're in the next book, which is Embers. And we also see Travis and a very pregnant Lane in this one. So we see those other characters. So I love this. I loved revisiting this. This is a 4-star read for me, and it is a like 3 on the spice scale. So this one is like they start with like friends with benefits in this, and I always forget that this one does have a little bit of praise and dirty talk in it as well, because Grant has a dirty mouth, and I appreciate it so much. So there we go. Loved that. All right, next up, we had A Soul to Touch. So this one is book 3, and this one was really unique. I liked this a lot. So this one is Faunus and Mayumi. So in this one, we have Mayumi, who is a dragon slayer. We start getting introduced to this, like, she has actually been discharged from it, which we'll get to in a minute, but she's been discharged from it, and so she lives on her own in a house, and she still does dragon slaying. She still does demon slaying, but she does it like on her own. And so she has this home that's a good time away, like quite a few miles away from the nearest town, but she still like does go into civilization now and then. And so she takes care of herself out there for sure. Now, and she will hunt demons at night and like sleep during the day. And she has it set up very nice where like she lays traps for the demons with like different animals for them to come and feed on, and then she can kind of shoot them down from the top of her house. It's cool, okay? Like think like a prepper, but like a female dragon or I keep wanting to say Dragon Slayer. You know why, okay? Dragons are in my brain right now. Demon Slayer, anyway. So then we have Faunus, who, he is someone we met in the second book, and he is actually dying. So now we learn about what can kill the Dustwalkers. So the only way to kill a Dustwalker is to pulverize their skull. So if you destroy their skull, they can't regenerate. And Faunus has a very deep crack in his skull, and it is starting to, like, come apart. He can feel it. It's pain. Normally, you know, the Dustwalkers can regenerate each day, and he's not. And Faunus has always had his eye on Mayumi. He actually almost ate her when she was little, but instead of her being afraid of him, she like hugged him. And again, like if she had been afraid, he would have eaten her, because that like makes them very animalistic. But instead, he like brought her back home. And since then, he's always kind of kept an eye on her, because he just felt this connection with her. And now that he knows he's going to die, he's decided that he wants to spend his last days like taking care of her. So he goes to where she is and is like watching her from the trees basically, and he's just planning to be there. Now Mayumi quickly figures this out and is like, come out, like come and talk to me. And she remembers him and also is like, oh cool. And so she literally like invites him in, and she's very intrigued by him. She feels attracted to him right away, which this is very interesting, but she describes it as like she's always been kind of a little attracted to certain like demons and things that they've seen, and has just always been curious about what fucking one of them might have been like. So, you know, we're a little sympathetic to Mayumi in this fashion. And of course, Faunus is very attracted to her, but he knows that he won't have her for a long time. You know, he could live for years, but he could also die very soon. Like whenever his skull finally cracks, it'll be done. And we also have, you know, I haven't mentioned him in the second one, but the Demon King is actively now trying to take out the Dustwalkers. And we do at this point know too that all the Dustwalkers are siblings. They come from the same two parents, which you'll learn through the books who those parents are and, you know, the purpose of all of that. And so Faunus is in danger because the Demon King, he's basically able to go wherever he wants, and it's very difficult to stop him. So he is like, oh, this is a Dustwalker who's weak. This is a Dustwalker that's close to death. He's the one I want to take out next. So there's also kind of a ticking clock on him. So yeah, we also find out a little bit about like the Demon Slayer Guild, the like hierarchy that runs the Demon Slayers, and they are a little bit sketchy. We find out more about that. So yeah, that is a difficult situation for them. So anyway, this is a really beautiful relationship between the two of them, and their relationship honestly like is the quickest to have them fall for each other, I think. But also the most difficult ones for them to say I love you, because they both know they have limited time together, you know. But I loved their relationship. I had such a good time with this one. And yeah, I gave this one also 4.5 stars, and it's a 3.5 on the spice scale. This one went up a little bit higher in that because Mayumi is voracious. She's like almost as horny as the Dustwalker is. So there's a lot of it in this one for sure. But there was some such touching moments, and the way that we figure out how to heal his skull was so beautiful. I definitely teared up a few times with that one for sure. So yeah, this one was 4.5. Yeah, there we go with that. All right. Next, I actually had a YA fantasy from a series that I loved about like 5-6 years ago. I think I read it. Maybe it was like 5, because I think I was doing BookTube already when I read it. I can't remember. But anyway, I read Vengeance of the Pirate Queen by Trisha Levenseller. So I have read almost all of Trisha Levenseller's books. I think I missed like one or two in the last couple years when I was kind of stopped reading it, but I've read almost all of her books and I like them because they still are like YA, but they're definitely like upper YA. They have a lot of violence and they're usually pretty sexy, even if there's not a ton of sex in it. Like I remember The Shadows Between Us. I loved that book. That was one of my favorite books of the year that I read it. I loved it. So this one is, it's said that it's a standalone within the Pirate Queen universe or the Pirate King universe, but it really does fit well if you've read the first two because Elosa is now the Pirate Queen, and our heroine in this one is Serinda, and she is an assassin that works for Elosa. And so at the beginning of this, we actually see her. This is a show don't tell situation. We see her taking out a villain and like his whole household in the beginning of this. And yeah. So then she goes back to the pirate island, the pirate keep or whatever, and Elosa has a job for her. She tells her that there are some women that she had that were being spies on a different ship, and they haven't heard from them in a very long time. And they were on their way to a certain place in the north, and they haven't heard from them, and she's very worried. So she's going to send a crew after them to find them and make sure they're okay. And she wants to send Serinda to do this. Now, Serinda has never been a captain. She doesn't really want to. She'd rather just be like the assassin or be like someone behind the scenes. But Elosa's like, no, you will be good at this because you'll be a humble captain and you also have the skills. Like, you've watched me all these years, like you can do it. So Serinda is like, cool. It's also, this is the part where like YA stuff makes you roll your eyes because like Serinda is literally 18 and like our hero in this book is only 20 and it acts like they act so much older than that because it's like, oh, you've been watching Elosa for years, huh? What? Since you were 12? I mean, probably, but there you go. So anyway, yeah, so Serinda is set up on this. Then we have, Kieran is the hero in this one, and he's someone we saw in the original duology. He was a drunk, and Serinda is actually the one who throws all his liquor away and kind of like pushes him towards sobriety, but she doesn't trust him, she doesn't like him, and he gets made her like her navigation guy, and she's just really irritated about this, and every chance that he tries to get close to her, she very much is like pushing him away. But anyway, so yeah, this one is they go on their trip to try to find these girls. And I mean, I don't want to spoil the trip. There's a lot of interesting things we run into along the way. But once we get where we're going, which we do at a certain point, there are other dangers there. And one includes this very evil entity that it's a bit like an Indiana Jones movie or something that they accidentally awaken, or maybe the Mummy even. Definitely Mummy vibes for sure. And he can control the dead. And once they wake him, they are in trouble. They're in trouble. So I'll just say that. It's a very slow burn between her and Kieran. And I mean, again, the most we get in this is some kissing basically. But I loved this. I listened to the audio. I had a ALC of this one. And yeah, this was so good. It's out already, so definitely grab this if you want to. I love the cover of this one. I also love the new covers that were made of the originals because those ones just had like weird covers to start with, but they have beautiful covers now. So I highly recommend this whole series if you don't mind it being a little more YA, but this was a breath of fresh air and I was glad that I read this. Okay, now we're here. I read Iron Flame. Here we go, everybody. All right. So I'm not going to say any spoilers in this review. I'm going to give like an overview of this story if you want to know. And then if I have any spoilery thoughts, I will put up the spoiler tag, which I might have some spoilery thoughts. When I get to the end, I'll like share what I felt about the end and everything. But for now, you're going to be safe and I'll put up the spoiler tag when we have it. But I'm going to put this up here because it's heavy. But there we go. So I read Iron Flame. I listened to the audiobook. I had pre-ordered the audiobook. So the minute that it came out, I started it at 7 a.m. on the 8th. And I just was diving into it so quickly. And by the end of that day, my book came, but I was listening to it. It took me until like the next day too, because I mean, it was like a 24-hour audiobook. I think it was long. And I didn't want to listen to this one too fast because I was like, I read Fourth Wing in one day when that one came out. And that was a great experience, but I wanted to take my time. So anyway, where are we with Iron Flame? Okay, so I need some coffee for this one. This starts pretty much exactly where the first one ended. So if you know where that ended, we start right there. And this came with Xaden having revealed quite a few things to Violet. This will have some spoilers for the first one. So if you don't want to know anything about the first one, don't do that. But anyway, this starts right where we're at. Violet has just kind of woken up from her injuries. She's discovered the truth that her brother is still alive and that Xaden has been working in like a revolutionary capacity. And not only has he been hiding that from her, but the dragons have all been hiding it as well because they didn't know if they were ready for it or not. So this, of course, puts a lot of tension in their relationship, which was just finally getting to a comfortable place to begin with. And so we definitely backslide in their relationship for a while, which is fair. I would feel very betrayed as well. I will say that in the first quarter to a third of this book, I was starting to get annoyed with Violet pushing him away so much because I'm like, girl, you agree with everything that he's trying to do. You just don't like that you were kept out of it. But, like, it wasn't just your life on the line. He has 107 scars on his back for 107 people that he is looking after. And at this point, it's even more than that because there's many more people involved in this revolution at this point. So, yeah, I understood her annoyance, but after a while I was like, come on. But I will say that, and with my friends I've spoken to finish this, again, the first quarter to a third of this, there was still some great stuff happening. I'm not saying it was completely slow. It just, it felt like we were spinning our wheels a little bit because what we end up having to do is after all these big revelations, they decide to go back to Basgaiath. They go back to the school because there are some good connections that Xaden has there. He's smuggling out certain things from there. And so to lose that connection right now, they're not ready to lose that connection. So we have to go back. And there is an explanation for why they were gone for 6 days and all this plays out. But basically they're able to, for the most part, go into year 2 and be ready for it. So we have a new squad put together. Now she's a second year. And knowing that, there's the whole thing where like Sagail and Taryn have to see each other every so often because they're mates. And in the first book, that wasn't so much of an issue because they were both at the school. So it was easy enough for them to see each other. Well, now Xaden, he is at an outpost that's like a whole day's flight away or half a day's flight away. And also one of the ways that these people can punish them for not quite trusting them, or they're not really sure that everything was on the up and up, but they don't have proof that anything bad happened, that they were up to anything. They make it very difficult for them to see each other, which is a punishment not only for them, but also for their dragons. So they're able to, every week on the weekend, one of them travels to the other, but it's just their dragons that have to see each other. So often, Violet shows up where Xaden is, and he's on a patrol. So she basically just goes and sleeps in his room and then has to leave because it takes half a day to get there and half a day to get back. So they only have 24 hours to be there because they have to be back within 48 hours. So difficult for them there. There's also definitely some people that do know that something sketchy happened and they are out to find out. So there's some tricky situations for Violet, many tricky situations for her. And there's particularly one professor that is just determined to get info from her. She also is very against Dane, obviously, because we believe he betrayed us. I mean, he did betray us, but I think you might be interested in Dane's arc in this one. I mean, I certainly was. I'll just say I don't hate Dane. I thought I would hate Dane, but you know what? I don't. So we'll just say that. That's like a spoilerish thing without it being a spoiler. I don't hate Dane. What's some other stuff to say? Okay, so we are advancing our powers. We're working on improving those. We are learning, new skills as second year. We are meeting the first years, one of which is Liam's younger sister, who, losing Liam, I'm still not over it, but he has a younger sister who she hates Violet's family now because she hasn't been told that Liam was like her friend. But Violet promised to look out for her, so that's someone she's looking out for. And there are friends that she's not allowed to tell what's going on to them. So there's lots of secrets she's having to keep. So this is that like typical second book where like we know a lot of things and we have to keep them to ourselves. So there's a lot of that. And again, that your mileage may vary. I love that saying. Your mileage may vary whether you think that's frustrating or not. I think it does play into the story as a whole. And the fact that this is from what I've heard, is a 5-book series, I think we still had a lot of good revelations. I think we still found out some very interesting things without, I feel like once there are 5 books, it will feel well paced. Again, I was a bit, I wasn't never bored. I want to be clear with that. I was never bored. It's only when I finished the book and I was reflecting that I'm like, okay, that first quarter to a third were slower than what we ended up with, because particularly from a certain event that happens, it is just full steam ahead and there is crazy shit happening all the time. So I was never bored, but some people might feel like they are, and that's fine. It's totally fine. I was listening to this. I was completely engrossed in it and I had a great time. So yeah. I mean, there's not too much else to say that doesn't really get into the spoilers, which again, I'll put the spoiler take up in a second. But my overall thoughts without spoilers is that I liked a lot of the info we found out. I thought we had a good amount of wins in this one as well as some losses. It felt like we were making progress in a lot of aspects. And then where we ended, again, I'll say this without spoilers. In the spoiler section, I'll talk about what we actually find out. But in a non-spoilery way, I know so many people, of course, are recording. They did it with the first one. Everyone's going to do this. They do this at the end of Crescent City. They're recording their reaction at the end. I honestly wasn't that pissed about it. And number one, I knew it was going to be a cliffhanger, right? Every book in this is going to have a cliffhanger because we want you to keep going, right? That's just how it happens in series. But I honestly wasn't that disturbed by the reveal. And I'll tell you in the spoiler section. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I'm interested to see how we're going to fix this. That's how I felt. Plenty of people, even one of my friends that I messaged, they were like, oh, it was horrible. And I was like, oh, was it? I didn't think it was that bad. So that's just me. I was honestly satisfied. Of course, I want to read the next one. That is absolutely not what I mean. But I was satisfied with everything that happened in this book. And so when we had that reveal, of course I'm devastated for the characters and what that means, but I was honestly like, oh, we'll be able to deal with this. That's how I felt. That's how I felt when I finished it, is I was like, we'll be able to deal with this. So I just wasn't that disturbed, whereas I think some of my friends were more disturbed than others. So, okay, now I'm going to put up a spoiler tag and I'll talk about what that revelation was and how I felt about some spoilery things in this one. So I gave it 5 stars, and this one definitely was a bit spicier than the first one. I do have flags where all the spicy stuff happened. So there wasn't a ton in this one. It isn't it didn't go full smut fest. There still is some sexiness in this one, but I gave it a 2.5 on the spice scale just because this was not all smut, but they are together now and they are exploring themselves sexually in this one. So there we go. So yeah. Okay, now the spoiler tag is up. So the ending to a few of the reveals in this one that were just fantastic to me that I really liked. Let's see. Number 1, So about Dane, I mentioned that. Now, I'm not saying that he's my favorite bestie or anything, but I thought that the explanation because he does betray them, but he betrays them by, he gets that info from her, right? He touched her face. He stole some info from her. He tells his dad. He wasn't telling his dad to fuck things up for her. He just thought she was maybe involved in some things that weren't quite right, because she's spending so much time with Xaden. So he tells his dad. His dad is the one who takes that information and does what he does with it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be pissed at Dane, but the level of vitriol that Violet feels for him, which I know it's a friend betraying you, but the level of vitriol that she feels, it's so high. Like, it's very much like a teenager overreacting to it, in my opinion. But there's a point in the book right at the end of part 1 where he like saves her and he chooses their side very strongly. Like, there's a turning point where when they leave Basgiath to go back to Xaden's home, Dane goes with them. And Xaden, which we now know because Xaden can read intentions, he can almost read minds. What? He knows that Dane is on the up and up, so he allows him to come with. And from that point on, like, Dane becomes very much a part of this, to the point that I was scared that we were going to lose him, because I was like, oh, is that going to be his redemption arc? Is that he now helped them and then he dies in this one? Which, that may still happen in a future book, but he didn't in this one, and I was like, thank God, because I didn't want to lose him. I really didn't. The revelation that her mom knows more about this than we thought. She's not necessarily like on their side fully, but she knows. She's the one who helps them leave at the midway point. That was fascinating. Jack Barlow still being alive, and his revelations at the end, which I'll continue on towards, that was a mind fuck. I was like, what? And Darna being a 7th type of dragon. That was so cool. Like, Andarna, we don't see her a ton in the first half because of her, she's sleeping, and growing. And I had a feeling that she might be, because we still haven't had time to fully unpack, like, what type of dragon she is and all that stuff yet. But we find out something interesting in a very, like, heated moment of this. Like, it's in the final thing, and Violet needs Andarna to help with this thing. So we didn't have time to fully unpack this, but there were times where we would see her, because she's coming into her full coloring, so she isn't a, like, feather tail anymore, but her color kind of, like, changes. Like, she'll look at her and she'll look black, but then she'll have, like, a sheen to her color. And we find out that she's making herself black because she wants to look like Taryn, because she admires him. But she can blend in. She's a chameleon dragon. Like, whatever type of dragon that will be called, like, she is like a chameleon dragon, or all colors, or whatever. And that makes sense, because there's some points where they tell her to hide, and she's able to literally, like, blend into the rocks. And Violet just thinks, like, whoa, that's crazy. So anyway, finding out that Andarna, the reason why she was able to bond with Violet, the reason why she was allowed to be a part of the threshing, is that that was the year that Violet was there. So Andarna, in an interesting way, is a little bit like, think of like Saphira, if you've read Aragon, where she was in her egg, and she was in that egg since like the 600 years ago, where things are kept secret. So she was the last of her kind. She stayed in her egg until Violet reached of age, and she felt that her rider was ready for her. So then she was born, and when Violet was at the school, she knew that she needed to be bonded with her, so she did. So there's a lot we'll have to unpack with that. I hope it will be in the next book. We'll get more of it. But Andarna was the last of her kind, and the elders were like protecting that knowledge and keeping it safe. And like Taryn and Sigale don't even know that. They just know that she was a baby, and they're protecting her. So I thought that was fascinating to come out, and I'm very intrigued by it. Okay, let's get to, because I don't want to spend forever on this one. We still have other stuff to talk about today. But the final, like, revelation then. I do also want to be clear. So this audiobook is, again, narrated basically solely by Rebecca Soler, with Teddy Hamilton has the last chapter again. I'm hoping eventually we'll have a dual narrated book, but just to prepare you if you would be disappointed, this audiobook does say Rebecca Soler with Teddy Hamilton. And again, it is all Violet's POV, and Xaden has the last chapter. So what we find out at the end of this big battle at the end, which is the Venin and the Wyverns are all coming after them. They're attacking. We're trying to get up the ward. You know, that's why we need the flames of all the dragons to make this work. Violet almost burns herself out. Her mother ends up sacrificing herself so they can power this up and get the wards going, which of course they do right at the last second. And so all of the venin and the wyverns that are within the ward, they all drop dead. At least in, you know, Besgaethan as far as the wards go out. Now, it was Jack Barlow who messed it up. We also find out that Jack Barlow had made him like he's a venin. That's how he survived. There are also clues that he was a venin before the mountain ever like fell on him. So that's how he survived. His dragon survived, and he was able to disconnect himself from his dragon, and he is in charge of his dragon. And he has this monologue about how they are below us, and he was able to so easily manipulate and control his dragon. So one of the things that I had wondered what might happen in this book, like I was like, will they find a way to be disconnected from a dragon so that, you know, if someone dies in this series, maybe like they'll still live or their dragon will still, I don't know. So to find out that, I mean, at least the venin are able to disconnect themselves from their dragons was a very disturbing to me. So Jack Barlow, he's a venin, and it was sketchy to me when he got brought back to the school, but we see him kind of like help Violet a couple of times, and like it's just weird. He like keeps to himself. It's very strange, very strange. But he is kind of like, he shows up at the end. He's the one who breaks the ward and lets the wyverns and them in. And when they're able to push all that out and they win, Violet goes to see Xaden because she's like, I need to set eyes on Tairn and Xaden, because she ended up having to send Tairn to fight while she tried to fix these wards. And when she goes to see Xaden, we find out that he was turned into a venin. There had been this dream that Violet was having. We'd only seen it from Violet's eyes throughout the series, or throughout the book. But I did have a feeling that that it was Xaden that was having the dream. That's just what I thought. To me, I thought that Xaden was having the dream and it was like projecting to Violet, and it turns out like that's probably what it was. And there was this sage who's one of the beings who like makes the venin and all of that nastiness. And there was this dream she was having of him saying, you will turn for love. And it turns out when we get Xaden's POV right at the end, that he was battling this sage right at the end of the battle, right before the ward went back up. And he was going to die, and instead of dying, he turned to venin. So he reveals to Violet that he's venin, and that like ends the book. And then we get his POV where he goes to talk to Jack and is like, what is the cure? And he's like, there's no cure. There's just that serum you can take so you can stay in control of it, but that's it. There's no cure. That's what we're told anyway, of course. So that was a big reveal, is that Xaden is now venin. So all of that, me explaining all that, why I wasn't as distraught as some people are. Well, number one, this is a fantasy romance series, so I'm not worried. I'm not worried that Xaden's gonna die or that Violet's gonna die and they won't be together. Yes, we might still have 3 more books of torture because they won't have an HEA till the end, but I'm not worried that they're going to die. It's very clear these two are the fated ones because of who their dragons are and who they are. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm just not. And I'm more fascinated by the fact of like, are we going to find a way to cure the venin? Because if Xaden is now venin, they say there's no cure, but are they really looking for one? Have any of the venin ever really tried to look for one? Like, we only know that Dr. Nolan was looking for it. He was trying to take care of Jack and keep him in control. But that's just one guy who was looking into it. Have we even tried to fully look for a cure before now? So anyway, that's my feeling. Yes, of course it still hurts. I'm not saying it wasn't a like, oh my God. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, this actually isn't as, you know, it's not the same as someone didn't die. Like, I was legit afraid that one of our like besties was going to die or one of that was going to happen. So the fact that it's like, okay, he's a venin. What does this mean? To me, it means, well, we are going to find a way to cure the venin. because Xaden's not going to stay a Venin forever. But I'm interested what that means. Like, will he still have the same kind of connection with Violet? Will he still have the same kind of connection with Sigale? What does that mean for all of that? That is more what I'm interested to see what it will mean. So yeah. So anyway, I talked so long about that, but those are kind of like my thoughts. I know they were kind of up in the air. You really will only understand them if you have read it already. But I loved this. I had such a good time. I'm an experience lover though. So sure, there's going to be things people find to pick apart. There's going to be people who say, oh, it wasn't that great. But the experience of listening to this and going through it, it's the same way I felt about Fourth Wing. So I gave this one 5 stars. I didn't give it 6 stars. It's not because I didn't like it as much as Fourth Wing. I just don't need to give all of them 6 stars is kind of the thing. So I gave this one 5 stars. It was, like I said, a 2.5 on the spice scale. And yeah, it was intense. So there we go. I got to move on because we still have a lot of other books to talk about. But there we go. All right, next I read A Soul to Guide by Opal Rain. And I'm going to get a little more vague about these ones because now we're on book 3 and 4 in the series. And you really do need to read these in order because there is an overarching thing in this one. But this one, book 4, is about actually an elf. So we have our first elf heroine. She's actually blind, and she accidentally ends up on Earth. She is doing this spell. She's actually kind of a magician and a scientist among the elves, and she accidentally opens a chaos portal, is what it's called, and she drops herself on Earth. How terrifying. She's blind, never been to Earth before, doesn't even know what it is. We know that this Earth is so dangerous and scary, and she's just been dropped on Earth with demons and humans and no way to get home because a chaos portal is a big, like, accident. Like, it's not something you can just create yourself. So she's in trouble. And then our hero in this one is Merrick. Her name is Raywin, by the way. And Merrick is a very advanced mafia, and he actually has a diadem or like this charm that makes him look human. So he's been disguising himself as a human for years because he's always been looking for some kind of like acceptance, really. And his sole goal is to leave Earth. He wants to get off of Earth. So when he comes across this woman who he knows isn't a human. He's pretty sure that she's an elf. And he makes himself, he insinuates himself into her life and says that he's going to help her get somewhere. She doesn't know that he's a dust walker to start with, but she also can't see him. So he wants to use her to get off of Earth, and so he's definitely playing a game with her for a little while. But eventually, once it's revealed who he is, like, she's like, okay, well, yeah, I want to help you. I'll help you. And so they're trying to work out a way for her to get back home. So that's what's going on in this one. We have our first, like, non-human heroine. And yeah, I really enjoyed this couple. Merrick is extremely grumpy. This is a grumpy sunshine. He's extremely grumpy, unhappy Dustwalker. I mean, none of them are, like, rolling in the joy, but he's a very unhappy one. And I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 3.5 on the spice scale. Then I read a mafia romance that I really loved. This was a new release, and I saw my friend Ashley post about it, as well as a couple other people I follow on Instagram, and so I had to have it. So this was Unholy Vows by Mila Kane. First off, look at this cover. How hot is this salt and pepper beautifulness? When I saw him, I won't lie, he looked a bit like Taika Waititi, who I think is good looking anyway, but like, look at it really fast. Maybe you'll see it. I don't know. But either way, this was beautiful. So this is an age gap, forced marriage, mafia romance. Our heroine, Charlotte, is actually a nurse, and I think she's like 25, 26. Her younger sister is 19, and she is dating a boyfriend who is a drug thumper. He's a bad boy. And in the beginning of this book, her boyfriend is killed by the mafia for fucking with them. And Lucy and Charlotte are witnesses to this. And so they get brought before Renato, who is the head of this mafia. And Charlotte makes a promise to him that they are not going to talk about this to anybody. She swears it. She will pray to him as a god. Like, she does this whole, like, dramatic thing. She's like, we won't tell anyone. Please just let us live our lives. Like, my sister, she was just in with the wrong crowd. I'm so sorry. And so he's like, okay, but I'm going to have my eye on you, so don't mess up. And Renato already starts to have the warm and fuzzies for this girl. Like, he just thinks she's so bold. She's so brave for how she kind of just, like, confronted him and, like, demanded this of him. And so, yeah, he has the warm and fuzzy feelings for her, for sure. But then her sister can't keep her damn mouth shut and actually tries to go to the police. And then it brings the police sniffing around them. And now her sister has escalated this past the point of, like, what they can control. And now the police are looking into him. And so Renato goes to see them again. And he's like, the only way that I know that you won't tell on us is if you're family. So you're going to be my bride and you're going to have my babies. And it's going to be great. That's what Renato says. And Charlotte's just like, no, like, I have my life. I want to do this. And, like, he, you know, is pulling her out of school and forcing her to marry him. And so, yeah, this then becomes a forced marriage where, again, he's also planning to, this one has some breeding kink in it because he's planning to make her his baby mama as well as his wife. So there definitely is her, like, pushing against this. She doesn't believe he can really love her. But I gotta tell you too, like, once he's married to her, he really is just kind of, like, amused by her, like, resistance, because he can tell she's really attracted to him. She is. And so her resistance against, like, being his queen is very, like, amusing to him. He likes it. And he is very tender with her. Like, there isn't any, you know, like, scariness that he does, like, besides being like, you have to be married to me, like, whatever. But yeah, there is some, like, even some BDSM, but it's all very, like, she wants it, because he does, like, spank her at one point. There's a time where he uses silk ropes to, like, tie her to the bed and, like, gag her, and she just, like, loves it, but she doesn't want to say that she does. So there's some very hot scenes. But also, this wasn't, like, just sex. This was actually, like, they don't even first are together until, like, 65% into this. So even though they have great chemistry, it's very sexy, this wasn't just sex in this book, which I appreciated because it had some really good story to go with it, and I liked that. So yeah, I gave this one a 4.5 star. Really, the reason I couldn't make it a full 5 is the sister was frustrating until right up to the end. It was so frustrating. And Charlotte was frustrating in the first half, but, like, I understood. Like, she doesn't want to marry this mafia guy. She has a plan, and her sister keeps fucking it up. So yeah, her sister had me rolling my eyes so much. I was so annoyed with her. So I can't give this a full 5 stars because it just got really frustrating. But yeah, I like this one a lot. And then the last book that I finished was A Soul to Revive by Opal Rain. This was the 5th book and currently the last book written in the Dustwalker Bride series. Opal Rain said at one point there will be 7 to 9 of these, so there's still more to come. The next one is going to be an MM romance, and I'm very excited because she sets up that couple at the end of this one, and I can't wait. But anyway, this one is about Ingram and Emery. Okay, so Emery is a demon slayer at the beginning of this. And Ingram he had a twin Mavka at the beginning of this. And that was Alaron. And Alaron and Ingram have just been kind of like, they still have pretty low intelligence at the beginning of this. And they're just kind of like these two Mavka, like, puppy type creatures who just go everywhere. And in the beginning of this, Alaron gets killed by demons because the Demon King is not fucking around. He wants to eliminate the Mavka and he's going after them. And the Mavka are doing everything they can to just, like, stay, like, the ones who are already paired up to, like, they have, like, banded together a lot to, you know, help each other stay alive. But Alaron gets killed. And so Ingram, he wants to find a way to bring Alaron back and kill the Demon King. So he actually comes up to a Demon Slayer stronghold because he wants them to help him kill the Demon King. Now, this is not going well for him because they immediately shoot at him, which sends him into a blood rage, which means he kills a bunch of Demon Slayers, which means, like, he gets captured and brought into the hold, and they are just like so happy they captured a Dustwalker because they don't know how to kill them. They don't know how to like defeat them at all. So they hold him prisoner and they start vivisecting him, which if you've read Cressley Cole, you know that that means surgery while you are coherent. So they like tear him open, they were pulling out his organs, and then look, he's healed himself the next day and we can start all over again. Now our heroine Emery, she has been moving up the ranks in the Demon Slayer crew. She's gotten pretty high up there, and she is a whip wielder, so she actually is part of the group that captures Ingram, and she actually gets assigned to him because she thinks it's wrong what they're doing, and as kind of punishment as well to desensitize her, the head of this guild forces her to be the one cleaning up after the torture every day. And through this, though, she starts speaking with Ingram, and she has pity on him. So she decides she wants to free him. And so with the help of the witch owl, which I know I haven't mentioned at all during this series, and I'm not going to explain who she is. You can find out when you read the books. But with her help, they're able to escape. And they need to try to get to the other mafia. That's what witch owl says. She says, find your brothers, go to them, and they'll help you. So this becomes the journey with Emery and Ingram to try to get there. Now, Ingram, he is of a lower intelligent level than some of the mafia we've just recently seen. So he doesn't know that he can make himself in almost like a human form, you know, that he can walk upright. He doesn't know he can retract his claws. He doesn't know what his cock even is yet because he's never been turned on by anything before. So like the first time that happens, it's very like kind of traumatic to him because he hasn't been around any women and, you know, or anything that was arousing to him until Emery. So there's definitely some challenges for these two as we go. But anyway, this is their journey. They want to try to end the Demon King. So we'll see if they were successful at that. And yeah, this one does have some pretty sexy stuff in here. There is anal tried for the first time, which is very interesting. With that big demon cock. All right. There's also, yeah, big dick for sure in this one. All of them really, but for sure this one. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars and it was a 3 on the spice scale for me. So, to wrap up this video, I said I would rank the Dustwalker books. So I would put that the first one is my favorite. If you saw the ratings, I gave this one 5 stars. I think it was a great intro. I also think it was the perfect like pacing, even though this is a thick book. The type of like demon, you know, that this Dustwalker is, it's understandable that our heroine isn't just immediately in love with him, right? Like I respect that. So I liked the slow burn in this one and I appreciated it a lot. So I liked this one the best. Then I think I like number 3. Then I would say number 2. And then 4 and 5 are kind of tied for me. So number 1 was my favorite, then number 3, and then 2, and then 4 and 5. That's how I'd rank them all. But they were all still so good. I can't wait for the next one, and I'm sad that I'm all caught up. So it was a good time. But anyway, all right, time to wrap this up. We are well over an hour with this one. But let me know what you think about some of these books I've read. Have you read Iron Flame yet? If you have spoilery comments, please make sure you like label them and then space down so we don't spoil it for anyone who wants this to be a safe comments. So please do that. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel for more videos, and we'll see you next time. Bye.